Hi there, my name's Simon Walker and I'm going to be talking about the digital skills emergency and basically how Kubrick's been trying to build tomorrow's technology workforce for today. So what we've been witnessing and a number of organizations have been witnessing is a huge acceleration in what we call the digital skills emergency. And there is a gigantic war for talent at the moment as more organizations are trying to put into data, AI, cloud, and there is not enough people coming onto the market with these new skills. Universities aren't producing them, schools aren't producing them. And also the problem is actually, you've also got a workforce that are within organizations where in fact, their skill sets are in danger of becoming obsolete, especially as technology moves so rapidly. One of the things that Kubrick does is we create our own workforce. And actually, even in our small history, if you take when we trained our very first data engineers, which was back in January 2017, and you compare our data engineers now, the 15 weeks training that we give them actually only has about 40% in common. So this digital skills gap is not only widening at such a fast pace, but it's actually leaving people behind that were actually technologically trained maybe as short as 5 years ago, but also 10 years ago. So this was probably one of my favorite bits of research. Back in June 2020, the Microsoft data science team actually looked at what were the capacity of jobs needed by 2025. And actually, if you just look at the UK in their research, that they predicted that by 2025, there were going to be 4 million extra roles required that were around data, cloud, AI, and cyber. If you think about that, that's actually more than 10% than the current working population. Now, I'm not for 1 second saying that all of those jobs will be filled, but that's the capacity that would be required by all organizations if they got their way. And also another thing for this is actually this huge lack of talent and a real difficulty of established education pipelines coming in, being able to supply those people are not giving the correct skills, and those traditional education routes are not being able to keep pace with the demand, but also the changes in technology. What this is also doing is this is compounding actually a lack of access for candidates from diverse backgrounds. So in fact, as you see at the moment, and quite rightly so, organizations are trying to make huge strides in being able to drive diversity. In fact, what we're seeing is a big risk that actually a lot of this is going to go backwards. So interestingly, as we see organizations trying to race to this data, what we've seen in actually COVID and lockdown and the acceleration of the need for these data skills seeing is because basically we're seeing a lot of our clients and a lot of organizations we work with, they're having to completely redefine their business models, not just to compete, but just to survive. And they're not unlocking the value that data is allowing them to perceive. And this was a survey that's been quite interesting in terms of what actually is happening with the current workforce. And where people think their skills are lying, and actually where the need is and where the pain points are. So we've been seeing gender diversity and disparity that's been very well publicized in technology. In fact, what it shows in women technology, we really haven't moved too much. But actually, if you look at something like data engineering, in fact, 12% of people within data engineering actually identify as female. And that really hasn't moved on at all. And this whole war for talent and this growing digital skills emergency is actually affecting something that we're calling the frozen middle. So I touched on it earlier. These are individuals that, and it was actually coined by a number of banks. And what these are is these are individuals that are in relatively senior positions in organizations, and maybe they've been there for 10 to 15 years, they have really, really strong knowledge of the organization they're within. Maybe they did have some technology skills, but actually they're obsolete now, or often they've gone into more business-facing roles. But as data, AI, and these new technologies are more pervasive in organizations, it's actually required that they've got to know about these. So one of the things that we're seeing is this frozen middle, and it's called the frozen middle because actually they're very well paid because they've been moving up in the organization, but because of the obsolescence of their skills, they're frozen in terms of where they can go. And this is a real danger, not only for organizations, but this is actually a real impact for those individuals. And it actually adversely affects women because, as you've seen previously, or as you can see here, that there's less people coming into the industry that are female, and the people that are going into the industry, often the women, the careers that they're following are non-technically based. So this frozen middle is likely to disproportionately affect women in those roles. So this is shown in what we call the leaky pipeline. So some of you might be familiar with it. So really interesting in the top graph here, what that shows is these are people from STEM degrees, okay, with a first and 2-1 at the end, but these are STEM GCSEs. So if you go at the top, it's not too clear, but what it does show is there's more women going to STEM degrees at a GCSE level. The pipeline begins to leak, so less women are in A levels than men, and that continues to degrees and then graduating in the workforce, hence this leaky pipeline. One of the things that we've been doing a lot of, and we've been speaking to a lot of our organization, in fact, Kubrick does this, is we look at STEM and data aligned degrees. So these are degrees that are able to have logical mindset, the skills that you might associate with someone that's moving into machine learning engineering, data management, cloud, but they're not a typical computer science degree or something like that. And actually, that's how you can readdress the gender balance. And that's why Kubrick is a very good gender balance at the moment, and it's continuing to grow. The other element that's affecting diversity and also making the war for talent far more difficult is the huge socioeconomic barriers to getting into the data and technology industry. I mean, we really are making lives hard for ourselves because on the one hand, we're saying there is this absolutely huge war for talent. There's not enough people around, but it is so difficult for people to enter this market and enter this profession. You know, we've got offices in the UK and the US. This is very UK centric. It's even worse in the US in terms of the costs that people need to be able to do in terms of training themselves. And they've often got to do that with no guarantee of employment. And absolutely, well, it'd be very, very difficult for them to actually financially support themselves whilst they're trying to learn. Often this stuff is very, very complex and takes full time to be able to absorb all the learnings and the technical training. So it is a very, very tall order to ask someone to be able to undertake that. So therefore, this socioeconomic barrier is then in place for maybe individuals that can't afford to be able to support themselves for that long period of time to also learn. So one of the ways that Kubrick have been looking to solve this, and also this is open to other organizations, is from day one, we employ our people and we give them an intense 15-week training program. And we do it in one of 5 practices: data engineering, data management, data product, machine learning engineering, and cloud engineering. And these are all practices that are desperately short of talent, and organizations require these people to come in. So we employ them from day one. They're on a salary, and we make sure that they have the right skills to then join our clients to be able to help them solve their data or technology challenges. 97% of the people that we've trained just simply wouldn't have entered the profession which I think is a real miss. And it's quite a considerable amount of people, and we're only accelerating and growing. So what that's been able to allow us to do is we've been able to buck the trend of the industry stats. So as I said before, in data engineering, it's 12%. We've managed to get 36%. We've got a Kubrick advanced element to our business. What that is people that have gone through all of our training, worked for 2 years out in the field, and they're now looking for leadership opportunities. And 50% of those in Kubrick Advanced identify as female, which is great to see. And they're bringing on the learning practices that they require to be able to lead teams for our clients. To date, we're actually now, we grew for Star Wars fans amongst you, we were set up on the 4th of May, 2016. We really started to trade in January 2017. We're now well over 1,000 people. And so far we have trained and produced well over 1,200 people that are out in that data, AI and cloud ecosystem, which is absolutely fantastic. We're now Europe's largest employer of data engineers, largest employer of data managers, and surprisingly, although it is, it's quite a small amount of people at the moment, but with 100+ machine learning engineers, we're actually one of the largest in the UK. And I think we've larger than Meta at the moment, which is pretty interesting things that are tech native business. So kind of the things that I would leave people with and to be aware of is, I think we're coming across, when we set Kubrick up, one of the elements that we heard from a lot of people coming into the industry is that they were looking for roles, applying for roles, and everyone was talking about 3 to 5 years experience. And one thing I do say to organizations, because they don't just have to use Kubrick, they can do a lot of this themselves, is beware of the unfillable roles. There's sometimes a medal of honor that you see from people that they have this unfillable role that their department is so difficult and so complicated that no one can ever fill it. And you see those around organizations where, someone's had an open position for a ridiculous amount of time for, 6+ months, and they nearly wear it as a badge of pride. But also, actually, it's less obvious. There's so many job adverts out that a lot of the people that eventually come and join us talk about, where they're looking for 3 to 5 years experience. If it's a rapidly growing workforce that we require, then it actually is going to be filled with people that do not have experience. People get experience very, very quickly. One of the things I've been most impressed with is seeing the alumni from Kubrick and actually seeing where in a very short space of time they've actually got to. Equally, the individuals that come in, and if you give these people an opportunity, they're normally from diverse backgrounds, or you've certainly got a better opportunity to get people from a number of diverse backgrounds. And they'll be bringing in diversity of thought. And actually, because they have the energy, they're at the beginning of the career, they've actually got probably one of the best culture radiators that you could have if you're driving that culture through your organization. And finally, what I would say is, which I talked about before, and it's perhaps it covers reskilling some of your talent within your organization that have very valuable IP and knowledge about your company, but perhaps their skills have either become obsolete or they've got transferable skills. We did a project recently with a very large communications company that basically knew that in the next 10 years, their technology roadmap required them to change considerably. And actually, when they looked at their workforce planning and they looked at the skills within their workforce, they could see that their workforce needed to change quite considerably. But at the same time, they had a number of people that were very, very valuable, had certain skills that they felt could transfer. And we did a large project of them, looking at the background of their workforce and looking at which ones were transferable to this new skill set. So therefore, they could do this gap analysis of skills And then they could look at where they could train people more efficiently, where they could get the greatest return. Thank you.